questions other than the one for BOD? No? Okay, cool.
we're going to get started with the Fall 2020 General Assembly of November 24th, 2020. So welcome everyone to today's General Assembly. We'll begin with item 1 on the agenda, call to order. We'll call to order at 16:18. Moving on to item 2, the land acknowledgement. The SSMU acknowledges that McGill University is situated on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe Nations, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples. The SSMU recognizes and respects these nations as the traditional custodians of the land and water on which it is located. Moving on to item 3, adoption of the standing rules. We'll move an adoption through raising hands. So can I have an individual move to approve? Thank you very much, SSMU President. Can I have a second? Thank you very much, VP University Affairs. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, I'll note that the standing rules for this afternoon's General Assembly will stand approved. I will also note that as we have not hit quorum, the General Assembly for the purpose of this meeting will be considered a consultative forum. As such, all meetings up for deliberation at this afternoon's General Assembly will further come to Legislative Council for ultimate approval. Moving on, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. The agenda has been distributed. I will first ask, are there any corrections or amendments to the agenda at this time? Again, I'll take it by raise of hand. Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve? Thank you very much, VP External, and thank you very much, VP Student Life. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the agenda will also stand approved. Moving on to item 5, question period. All individuals with questions may now raise their hands. I'll note that all has to remain to the confines of the General Assembly, which is to say no matters of legal nature regarding to ongoing legal matters will be discussed. However, I will recognize all items of discussion that I deem in order. Senator Daryanani. You should have access. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had 2 questions about the format of the General Assembly. Why is it a webinar format, and what are the numbers of attendees right now? How far are we from quorum? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So why is it a webinar forum? Given that Zoom can only ultimately handle up to 100 participants, and given that our quorum for General Assembly is 350, in the case that we did hit that number, we would require a Zoom webinar as opposed to simple Zoom meeting. As to how far we are, while we did have over 80 people registered to come, we have 57, and we are not close to hitting our 350. Are there any other questions at this time? Again, if you have questions, you can raise your hand through participants panel. Seeing none, we will move on to item 6, new business. We have one item for approval at this General Assembly, and it is item 6A, the motion regarding nominations to the Society's Board of Directors 2020-11-24. And given that SSMU President had moved it, SSMU President, you may motivate it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the directors, their terms go from November 15th, I think, to November 15th of the following year. So the terms of our previous directors are up, and in order to be in accordance with our governing documents as well as with our MOA with McGill, we have to nominate the new set of directors to the board. So that's why this motion is coming before you all today. The members consist of the 4 executives, 4 counselors at large, 4 counselors, 4 members at large. And so those are the individuals that you see listed in the motion there. So I'll take any questions at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, SSMU President. We'll first move on to question period. Are there any individuals with questions? Again, raise of hand is appropriate at this time. Seeing none, we'll move on to debate. Are there any individuals wishing to participate in debate at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. I'll note that for the purpose of the General Assembly, all individuals present at this afternoon's General Assembly are eligible to vote. It will be distributed through a Zoom poll. Once I launch it, you will have the opportunity to either vote approve, oppose, or abstain. And it should be launched now, everyone. I'll give everyone 15 more seconds to vote. And with that, I'll announce the closure of voting with 46 in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 abstentions. The motion is approved and will come to Legislative Council for ultimate approval and ratification. Moving on to item 7, we next have the report of the Board of Directors. SSMU President, once we have the file, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is the report of the Board of Directors. So with the overview, we'll go over what is the Board of Directors, so like its composition, key decisions, and then there will be a question period for anyone who wishes to ask directors or the speaker questions. So we'll move on to the next slide. So what is the Board of Directors? So composition, requirements, and powers. As I mentioned earlier, its composition consists of 4 executives, which consist of the president, vice president of finance, vice president of student life, and an additional executive, as well as 4 counselors who were nominated at one of the legislative council sessions prior to this, and then 4 members at large who go through an applications process, and 1 international student representative who goes through the same applications process as the members at large. So the requirements to be on the board in Canada means that you have to be at least 18 years of age, a citizen or permanent resident of Canada, not be bankrupt, and not have been declared incapable by a court, and additionally not have a criminal record. So moving on to the powers of the Board of Directors. So it's the highest governing body of the SSMU. It's primarily responsible for the SSMU's finances, operations, and legal aspects. So they also ratify resolutions passed by the Legislative Council. So council meets bi-weekly, and any motions that are passed there ultimately come to the board for ratification. And if the board has any questions, they can send it back to council just for clarification, and then it'll come back to board for approval. And again, the board meets bi-weekly, so we meet every second Thursday at 6:30 p.m. and we'll have a meeting coming up this week, actually, on Thursday. So key decisions since the winter 2020 General Assembly, there haven't really been any major key decisions taken by the board since the General Assembly that happened in, I think, February of this past year. I guess the main one was approving an interim provision for elections and referendum, and this was just that normally the way it works is the timeline for these happens after the first legislative council session, but that wouldn't have been until the 2nd or 3rd week of school this year. So that means that for things like the first year council, and I think for the clubs and services representatives, those wouldn't have been able to run until October. So we just approved an interim provision allowing these campaigns and elections to occur right from the start of the semester, so before the first legislative council session. I'm sure we'll have more key decisions by the winter General Assembly, but that's it for now. So I'll leave it for any questions. And that's my email in case anyone ever wants to get in touch to talk about decisions of the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, SSMU President. All individuals with questions can raise their hands. Senator Daryanani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is, are you excited for Thursday's board meeting?
SSMU President.
I'm always excited for Thursdays, whether it's legislative council or board. It's a highlight, I guess. Yeah, I really enjoy it. So I am looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Daryanani and SMU President. Are there any other questions on the report of the Board of Directors? The phone number. If you can just state your name for the purpose of the minutes as well as spell it out, I will give you access. The number beginning, yeah.
Yeah, that's me, Asa Cohn, ASAKOHN. Could the president cite or identify in some way the provision of law, I guess Canadian or Quebec law, that he mentioned that requires all directors to be Canadian citizens or permanent residents?
SMU President?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I will get that if you give me just a minute or two.
All right, thank you very much, SMU President. Are there any other individuals with questions at this time? Seeing none, for the purpose of time, member of the gallery, Asa Cohn, if the SMU President finds it later, I can send it to you through email as I have your email address, but I will ensure that it's sent to you. Are there any other individuals with questions on the report of the Board of Directors? SMU President?
Yeah, sorry, I have the answer to the member at large. So it's subsection, it's section 126, subsection 1 of the Non-for-Profits Act, which specifies the requirements to be on the Canadian Board of Directors.
All right, thank you very much, SMU President. Member of the gallery, Asa Cohn.
Sir, one quick follow-up. Is SMU a federal nonprofit or a provincial one? Do the federal rules apply even to provincial nonprofits?
SMU President?
Again, I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but that one I'll follow up with over email. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, SMU President. Are there any other questions on the report of the Board of Directors at this time? Seeing member of the gallery, Asa Cohn. Member of the gallery, Asa Cohn. Okay. With no further individuals with questions, we'll move on to item 8, report of the executives, and we'll begin with item 8A, report of the president. So SMU President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, so I'll just go over, I guess, my role, projects I have in place, and then the same format. So, like, any questions? So, for the role of the president is internal governance, representation, and advocacy, and some other various items that fall under my purview. So, the role of the president, like outlined in the Constitution, means that I'm the chief officer and spokesperson of the society. My goal is to ensure long-term integrity of the SMU, as well as enforce the Constitution and internal regulations, maintain governing documents, so our internal regulations, the Constitution, policies and plans, etc., as well as chair and coordinate the executive committee. So that is the elected executives which meet weekly. And I also manage HR and serve on the Human Resources Committee, which meets bi-weekly. And then I serve as one of the executives on the SMU Board of Directors, as well as to call meetings and set agendas. So for the Executive Committee, manage the SMU McGill Administration Relations. So I meet once a semester with Principal Fortier We have, myself and the VP University Affairs have standing meetings with the Deputy Provost of Student Life and Learning. There's been a new Dean of Students selected recently, so I think those are semesterly meetings as well. But the administration has made it clear that their door is always open if there's ever any issue or concern that folks would like to raise. So if there's anything you ever want to bring up, send me an email and we can most definitely facilitate a conversation with the administration. I also represent the 23,000 undergraduate students on the McGill Senate with the VP University Affairs, and then on the McGill Board of Governors with the PGSS, so the Postgraduate Student Society Secretary General. And then as a subcommittee of the Board of Governors, I sit on CAMSA, which is the committee to advise on matters of social responsibility. So I work, I guess, a lot with, or not a lot because they're only meeting twice this year, but I have some consultations with Divest McGill concerning CAMSA. So more to come on that. I guess we've had our first meeting already, but the next meeting will be in March. So more to come on that there. As subcommittees of the Senate, so I sit on the Senate Committee of Physical Development and the Committee on the Rights of Senate, the latter of which hasn't met yet. And then as I mentioned before, just representation to McGill administration. So the student staff, I guess they're under my portfolio, are the sustainability commissioners who chair the environment committee, as well as the governing documents researcher who chairs the comprehensive governance review committee. So that if you have any questions on like the Constitution or any of our governing documents, you can definitely reach out to me or the governing documents researcher to bring any of those points up, and we will bring that up at the committee meeting. For projects, I have two main projects. So the first one is, I guess, the biggest platform point that I ran on, which is the 5-year plan. So I've been working on that over the summer, and it's coming to the next legislative council, which will be next week at 6 p.m. For approval. If anybody, I guess, has input or questions on that, send me an email or show up to council, and they will definitely be more than welcomed. But essentially, the 5-year plan is designed to drastically expand the smooth offerings in 6 departments. So it's staff, clubs, services, finance, operations, and advocacy. So it's a pretty detailed plan, and I'm looking forward to, I guess, discussing it at next legislative council to get more thoughts on it. And then the second biggest project is working with the Comprehensive Governance Review Committee, which I mentioned before, to review our governing documents and procedures and put forth some recommendations next semester. So there are no projects completed because they're pretty big tasks right now, but hopefully by the next GA, the 5-year plan might be approved. So that will be something that we can check off, and then we'll begin its implementation. But I will leave it to questions now. Thank you all for coming and listening.
All right, thank you very much, SMU President. All individuals with questions can raise their hands at this time. Seeing no individuals with questions, we will now move on. We'll move on to item 8B, report of the VP External.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, so yes, this is the report of the Vice President External Affairs for fall 2020. So who am I? My name is Ayo Ogunremi. I use he and pronouns. Nice to meet you all. So the platform, well, I guess before I get into that, just like the Office of Vice President of the Vice President External Affairs kind of treats obviously all of the external affairs of the society, as well as the community affairs, community engagement, union affairs, and political campaigns. These are like the main portfolios within the office. So my platform of the winter 2020 election focused on 4 items. So strengthening campaigns, both internally and externally, promoting affordable housing and community engagement, amplifying marginalized voices, and promoting responsive and transparent governance. And sort of since, and yeah, like to kind of articulate the main goal, like how all of those aspects of the platform cohere into like the work that I've been doing within external affairs. I put here my main goal is to build the political infrastructure and institutional memory of the External Affairs Office. So that's kind of encapsulates a lot of the work that has been going on. So starting with external affairs, which is like the sphere of action over which I have the most, or in which I have the most input. Generally, something that I've noticed has been like quite important for the External Affairs Office is just to kind of institute a kind of political action database. So this is just the point of this sort of initiative is to enhance our understanding within external affairs of the sort of political and organizational landscape within which we organize and advocate. So that means getting a better understanding and awareness and also connection to the political offices of Montreal, Quebec, and Canada, the labor unions, the student unions, and the community organizations. These are the main political actors that we that exist or that we work with. Secondly, recently we just concluded the hiring of a political researcher who will basically primarily assist me with the previous point of political developing the political infrastructure and also doing independent new political research to sort of update to have updated research-backed advocacy positions on items like the accessibility of education, sexual violence legislation, and so on. So moving on to inter-association relations. Oh, sorry, it's the same slide. 2 slides back. Yeah, thank you. So inter-association relations. So that consists of these are student associations, student unions beyond the McGill campus. So primarily, this consists of relations, like the best relations that we have are with CSU, which is the Concordia Student Union, AFESPED UQAM, which is poli-sci and law students at UQAM, AFESH UQAM, which is like humanities students, and UOSU, which is the student union at the University of Ottawa. That's kind of one, I guess that, yeah. But like on a more structural or formal or kind of forum-based level, we participate in a recently developed inter-associative, which is a provincial sort of roundtable of around 28 student unions throughout Quebec, concerned with a wide variety of issues affecting students, notably the variety of issues affecting international students, such as the deregulation of tuition rather, and the new restriction on the Programme de l'Expérience Québécoise, as well as Bill 21, climate change, etc. So moving on to student federations, this is kind of similar to the work that is going on within the inter-associative just mentioned. The only student federation in Quebec at the moment is called UEC, and the SMU is not a part of UEC, but has been an observer at their meetings for several years now. So we sort of were involved in their advocacy work against the PQ reforms this summer. Then secondly, concerning student federations, the SMU is affiliated, or not affiliated, but is part of an informal federal oriented organization called UCRU, which stands for Undergraduates of Canadian Research Intensive Universities. So there I sit on the board and the advocacy committee. So that consisted of in the summer writing advocacy letters, kind of deciding advocacy priorities for budget submissions to the federal government. And recently, while I was away, the development of a new campaign called Debt Free Degree, as well as the Federal Lobby Week, which is this week, which consists of all of the student union representatives who sit on or are involved with UCRU, meeting several MPs, ministers, staffers, to advocate for the positions that UCRU has adopted, or that UCRU is prioritizing this year. And then the PQ, I've already mentioned this, collaboration. And so over the summer, especially, but also now, kind of beginning again, we collaborated with student unions, labor unions, and other community organizations to oppose the reforms. And yeah, part of the effect of that opposition was some very minor concession, but it was a real concession from the Quebec government for those who actually were affected by it. And yeah, ongoing research and outreach with the campaigns coordinator, one of them. So yeah, next slide, thank you. Okay, so with respect to community affairs, I can talk about three main aspects of this dossier. So the first is the CCMP, which is the Comité des Citoyens et Citoyennes de Milton Park, the Milton Park Citizens Committee. They have been working since last year on two very kind of ambitious campaigns to socialize, you could say, the Royal Victoria Hospital and the Hotel Dieu Hospital. These are two hospitals within the Milton Park neighborhood that are no longer in, or generally no longer in use, and the advocacy surrounding those hospitals is for them to be transformed to like public social uses. I will be attending the AGM on Thursday. Secondly, the board meetings of the CKUT. So this is not kind of an institutional responsibility of external affairs, but just of the SMU executive. So I decided to sit on the board of the CKUT this year, CKUT being the radio station that's affiliated to SMU. I sat on the McGill Visibility Committee while I was in the position, as in before I was unwell, and attended that AGM yesterday, where I was actually, in fact, elected for to the board. So it's official since then. And then finally is affordable student housing. So there is an affordable student housing committee within SMU, chaired by the Community Affairs Commissioner, who held ad hoc meetings of a kind of proto committee over the summer in order to provide mobilization and material support for this Royal Vic for the Public Coalition that was already mentioned. And but the main purpose for this committee is to be the kind of point of contact with this organization, this nonprofit organization called UTIL, which is a which works to develop affordable student housing throughout the province of Quebec. We have a project with them to create 300 units of affordable student housing within Montreal for McGill, primarily undergraduate students. We can get to the next slide. So with respect to political campaigns, the general kind of work that's been going on is the creation of a campaigns guide with the campaigns coordinator, because the position the portfolio itself, the dossier itself, and the position of campaigns coordinator can be vague and yeah, just sort of unclear. So we're working together on creating a sort of clarificatory campaigns guide, as well as a student organizing publication that's kind of just beginning. The main campaigns that McGill, or rather that SMU supports, are Divest McGill, Climate Justice Action McGill, McGill Against Bill 21, Students for Peace and Disarmament. So below each of those is kind of some of the details of what they had been working on over like the past 6 months or so. Then the last one, Take James Down, is kind of, well, not really a campaign, but this was just something I assisted with kind of in my capacity as the VP External, and just having had a history with working with the Black Students Network. So I helped organize the Open Letter and Protest, as well as a documentary that's being produced by the BSN and the Indigenous Student Alliance. So we can go to the next slide. And then, finally, maybe the union affairs primarily kind of relates to, or rather the main forum for union affairs, which refers to the labor unions within the kind of McGill ecosystem, is the McGill Communities Council. So I'm kind of the representative of the SSMU to that forum. So those are monthly meetings. I've been kind of like them, and sort of the main contributions that I have made have been to, well, the Black affairs of the society, and also just kind of the mutual solidarity and raising awareness, making common cause within like the student body and within the employment associations and labor unions. An example being like the payroll disaster that is occurring right now with McGill. And then also, I guess, another aspect of union affairs is meetings with MUNACA, which is one of the labor unions that represents white-collar, non-academic staff. So that's just working on, we had been working a bit prior to the summer, and then since I've returned in November on Black affairs and equity infrastructure, hoping to do the same with other unions as the year progresses. Okay, and then some other projects. Most of these were completed in the summer or just kind of recently. So this is with the VP Finance and the Indigenous Affairs Commissioner, I created an honorarium guide just to assist clubs, student groups, like student clubs, student groups, and also student campaigns with the often kind of difficult process of getting an honorarium delivered in a timely manner. Worked with the VP Student Life as according to the Indigenous Solidarity Policy to create an Indigenous stakeholder consultation guide, as well as a contact information guide with the VP University Affairs and the Black Students Network. Helped create the Black Affairs Committee, which was struck in September. And we've been kind of addressing some incidents of academic racism since the summer, and I've been working on the External Affairs website because I have one, and that's awesome. So I think that's everything. The next slide. Yeah, that is. All right, well, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, VP External. Are there any questions on the report of the Vice President External Affairs at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to item 8, item 8D, report of the Vice President Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to everyone in attendance for coming. So I'll start with the agenda. So I'm going to go over 4 kind of main sections. The first is general finance and accounting. Then there's funding. Then there's clubs and services. And then there's health and dental insurance. And for each, I'm going to explain how it relates to my portfolio or kind of what I do, some major updates so far for the year, and the impacts of COVID. So starting with general finance and accounting, what I do is mainly, like my main goal is to ensure, the main goal of the VP Finance, is to ensure the long-term financial sustainability of the society. So that involves regular reporting to relevant entities, acting in accordance to the society's governing documents, and as well as making financial recommendations for the society when necessary. I'm also involved in the creation of the annual budget for the following fiscal year, meaning that I will create the budget for next year, as well as 2 budget revisions in fall and winter semesters. I also manage and review society's cash flow, both monthly and yearly, and work with the accounting team for analysis on that cash flow. I act as assigning authority for the entire society, so that includes contracts, transactions, more, and I also have a seat on the finance committee. Next slide, just more of kind of what's in the portfolio. So I assist with the annual audit, which generally happens in August through October. I oversee the investment portfolio, so ensure sustainable, SSMU appropriate investments, as well as the maintenance of the portfolio in alignment with the internal regulations. And the last 2 things is just general assistance. So I provide general accounting assistance for procedures and communicating said procedures to the necessary individuals, and just general finance assistance. So next slide is updates so far for the year. So budget revisions are currently being completed and should be done by the end of the month. The next is the audit is wrapping up finally. For anyone who isn't in the loop about that, the audit was delayed by 1 month this year in order to give student groups extra time to locate their receipts and submit their financial reports, just because COVID affected everyone for that. So that's why it's a month later, but I actually had a meeting literally just before this and received a presentation from Fuller Londo, who was our auditing company. Another update is all accounting procedures have been moved online. That was a huge task. So shout out to the accounting team for their assistance on that. And then there's the updated accounts payable tracking, or AP tracking. So check requests can now be tracked remotely from beginning to end. Although this still requires contact between me and whoever's requesting an update on said check request, everything can now be done virtually and remotely. We're also working on automating accounting tasks. So currently we're developing automatic monthly reports for each department within SSMU, including services, to increase financial clarity. That means that all the departments will receive how much they've spent so far from the year, so they can budget accordingly. Something that wasn't done in the past, or wasn't automatically done in the past, I mean. And then the Finance Committee is currently conducting an investigation into SSMU student fee policies, and that investigation is wonderfully known as the ISFEP. So to elaborate on the ISFEP a little bit, so the investigation into SSMU student fee policies is, or its purpose is evaluation or evaluating the current processes for new fees to be approved, and increasing fee recipient accountability and managing the budgets. Looking at what recourse does the society have to change fee amounts once they've been passed, analyzing the process for renewing fees, and then providing insight into what information is needed for Legislative Council to be able to make informed decisions about fee renewals. So the purpose of this investigation was originally sparked by student concerns surrounding how SSMU levies fees, especially during COVID-19. And then also through analysis of internal SSMU departments. The overall purpose is to increase financial accountability within the SSMU, which is certainly important. And then, yeah, so shout out to the Finance Commissioner and Finance Committee for their amazing work so far in this investigation. Moving on to the impacts of COVID-19 on general finance and accounting. So from a purely financial perspective, the society has not been drastically affected. which is good news for everyone. In fact, membership increased since last year, even despite COVID-19, meaning there's more members, which is just great for the society overall. Some notes, though, is GERTS did not open in fall 2020, which was originally expected. Therefore, there's no GERTS revenue. And then the investment portfolio initially took a small hit back in March, April, but has since fully rebounded and is actually doing quite well right now. So shout out to the finance team for maintaining stability throughout the pandemic. Another impact is the audit started a bit later this year, which I mentioned earlier, because we gave student groups extra time to collect and submit their finances. And then lastly, SSMU finance and accounting procedures have been moved or possibly forced online entirely, which is great because it actually kind of modernized our procedures, which is something that has been a long time coming, in my opinion. So moving on to funding. What is my portfolio, kind of what I do? So I oversee the disbursement of over $350,000 of funds every single year, and you'll see those funds listed right there. And then I also work on like funds being renewed at referenda every few years upon expiry. So every 5 years, a fee must be renewed at referenda. So I work on drafting motions when necessary for that. I also sit on the funding committee. And lastly, I provide an analysis of underutilized and overutilized funds. So updates for this year, the ambassador fee is the only fee that was renewed from my end, and it was renewed at $2 per student per term. And this fee provides monetary support for groups that represent McGill in the SSMU external conferences and competitions. The second update is the revision of the funding application process behind the scenes. So in the past, the timeline for funding applications from reception at funding committee to the disbursement of funds was 3 to 5 weeks, and I'm now looking to reduce it to 1 to 2 weeks. And these revisions are being voted on at the next legislative council. And then also, lastly, there are some further amendments that I'm working on, just bringing the funding committee up to date. Just a few membership changes and some wording changes, but nothing substantial on that. So the impacts of COVID-19 on funding, not a whole lot. There have definitely been less applications this year, just because there aren't as many events being held due to everything being remote. And then the events that are being held virtually tend to be cheaper just because you don't have to book a space for those. So with that being said, apply for funding. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to me or the funding commissioner. Next section is clubs and services. So what do I do with clubs and services? I'll start with clubs. So I provide general club support, so contract review, the club audit, which is happening a bit later this year, and ensuring that clubs appropriately utilize their money. I also work with the club finance coordinator to create and upkeep all of SSMU club bank accounts on RBC Express, and then just troubleshoot issues with clubs banking access. Some updates for this year. So banking has moved almost entirely online, which has been a huge project behind the scenes. So this year, with a pilot project with RBC, we have implemented virtual tokens, which are accessible from anywhere in the world, which, yeah, essentially we don't have to mail out physical tokens all over the planet, which is nice and makes it easier, I think, for clubs behind the scenes, I hope. And now clubs can apply for in-track deposits through Central Club email, meaning that it's just much faster for them to receive money if they need to. I guess next steps, I included this because I think it's important to note. We still need to move banking resources online, so checkbooks and deposit slips. We're still kind of working on a better solution for that, but yeah, that's in the works right now. Also developing a better resource and credit card distribution system. Obviously, right now with COVID, it's difficult to meet in person, and it's especially difficult if that person is not in Montreal. So we're kind of trying to come up with a better distribution system for this year. And then just improving remote communications with clubs. So moving on to the services section, what do? I review service budgets, approve purchases, approve credit card expenditure reconciliations each month, review and approve contracts, and just provide general financial support if ever needed. So for updates this year, services now have credit cards, which is fantastic. I think that's been a long time coming as well. So after successful test in 2019-2020, the administrative work required to get service credit cards is complete. So shout out to last year's finance team for testing that out. So it's reconciled by service card holders and then approved by me, the general manager, and the controller. And then these card limits are determined by total money raised each year through their student fees. Is our insurance company that we use. So you'll see health not available for international students, but they have access to dialogue, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then for dental, it's available for all members. Cool. So updates for this year. So the health plan now includes dialogue at no extra cost. And you may be wondering, what is Dialogue? Well, Dialogue is a telemedicine service that provides remote support for just general health concerns, stress and wellness, obtaining and renewing prescriptions, and finding health resources such as clinics and specialists. So it's an app on your phone, and all members on the health plan get it for free. Just for reference, I had to look up a dentist, and I found one literally just like super nearby in 2 minutes. It's a great resource. I recommend everyone get it if you're on the health plan. And then also working with Student Care right now to implement a 2-tier insurance plan, meaning that students will be automatically enrolled into the cheaper of the 2 options, but will have the option to opt into one with more coverage that costs a little bit more. So that just, yeah, sorry, anyways. So just the impacts of COVID-19 on health and dental insurance, not a whole lot, because the insurance plans saw less use at the end of last year. SMU received a rebate, which was used to provide additional services to its members, which then came in the form of dialogue, as I just explained. Cool. Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Also, there's one more slide with my contact information and a picture of my dog.
All right, thank you very much, VP Finance. Are there any questions on the report of the VP Finance? Seeing none, we will move on. We will now move on to the report of the Vice President, University Affairs.
Hello, everyone. So I followed the long tradition of VP's UA not following the Google slide format, but here's my presentation. Wing, if you could. Oh, one more. So for those who don't know me, my name is Brooklyn Frizzle. I use they, them pronouns. I'm from like the middle of nowhere in rural Nova Scotia. And I'm a microbiology student because of course that's relevant to student politics. But enough about me. Wing. Thank you. So this is what the UA portfolio used to look like a couple of years back. I think maybe 2016, 2017, couple changes. So there, faculty relations are no longer under my portfolio. The academic roundtable isn't a thing. Couple positions have changed. The UA committee is gone. So yeah, this no longer accurate. If you could flip. So yeah, no, we're cutting that. So one more, thank you. Yeah, so the new A portfolio has been reorganized into 3 pillars: equity and advocacy, university affairs and research, and academic resources. Sorry, we're still working on the new infographic. This is the best I could come up with. But I found that this was just much more understandable. The UA portfolio is kind of notorious for being opaque and difficult to understand and kind of just vague, but hopefully this presentation will be understandable. Next slide. Right, okay, so University Affairs and Research, couple responsibilities, and by couple, I mean so many. So undergraduate, Senate, and committee representation. I coordinate like the representation of all undergraduate students to the university and like all levels of governance, which is a much bigger task than I think I expected it to be, but here we are. So that includes essentially like mentoring, overseeing, advising all of our student senators and appointing all of the undergraduate representatives to university committees. I support, chair, and train the Senate caucus. I oversee, essentially like student rights more generally, and that includes the Know Your Rights campaign with the assistance of the student rights researcher and advocacy commissioner. I oversee university relations and student representation. I spend a lot of time talking to McGill administrators, and essentially my job is to hold them accountable to the best of my ability. That includes some like policy review and development, super fun, exciting, interesting stuff, and a lot of research and advocacy projects. Next slide. So there's a couple staff in that section of my portfolio. First is my Secretary General, Annabelle, who I'd be absolutely lost without, helps me coordinate Senate caucus. The SRAC, Adrian, who oversees the researchers, Student from Care Project Assistant, and a number of special researchers that are kind of, those positions are formed ad hoc based on whatever we need to research. Next slide. So a couple committees. The Senate caucus, as I said, I sit on the McGill Senate Steering Committee, the Senate Nominating Committee, the Scholarship Review Committee, and the Committee on Student Services, which take up a fair amount of my time, all pretty high stakes, all very, very formal. But yeah, that's my university-facing side. Next slide. Equity and advocacy. So I support a couple portfolios within my portfolio, including Black Affairs, Francophone Affairs, and Indigenous Affairs. So I work with and support those commissioners and their committees. I oversee SSMU's anti-sexual violence mobilization advocacy and help with some educational programming as well. I oversee equity complaints and accountability, both equity complaints that we receive or my own like accountability projects within the society. I like to think that we have two big political positions within the SSMU. There's external and there's university affairs. And whereas external is more mobilization, agitation, like community organizing, mine is a little bit more institutional. So I think committees and policies and like letters. So institutional advocacy and mobilization, I kind of try to make it as accessible as possible to organizers that might not have the same institutional access. I also oversee equity education and programming and the menstrual hygiene project. So for those who don't know, any bathroom on campus that has free menstrual hygiene products available, SSMU is the one that put them there. We fund the menstrual hygiene products on campus, and we actually employ menstrual hygiene product coordinators that go around and stock all of the bathrooms on campus. So that is SSMU's doing. Next slide. Couple committees, relevant staff, right. The ASVMA, who helps me urge for anti-sexual violence mobilization advocacy, including the review of the policy against sexual violence a couple of years back. The new Black Affairs Commissioner, both equity commissioners, la commissaire aux affaires francophones, the Indigenous Affairs Commissioner, and a handful of menstrual hygiene product coordinators. Next slide. Committees, the newly founded Black Affairs Committee, as well as the Board Ad Hoc Committee on Naming, which I founded, the Comprehensive Governance Review Committee, I'm sitting on that this year, the Equity Committee and Equity Complaints Committee as necessary, the Francophone Affairs Committee, and the Indigenous Affairs Committee. Next slide. Oh, yeah, cool. Okay. Academic resources. So this, I'm sure, sounds super exciting, but I oversee library development and the Library Improvement Fund, which is actually one of the society's biggest funds. So with that, we kind of oversee study spaces and physical development within libraries. I kind of oversee academic accessibility, including our Open Educational Resources Project, and just kind of generally manage library relations. Within this portfolios, there's the Library Improvement Fund Commissioner, the Open Educational Resources Commissioner, that should say coordinator, and open educational resource assistance as necessary. And for committees, I've got the Library Improvement Fund Committee. Next slide. Cool. So to give you an idea of how it all works together, these are all the staff that are kind of related to the University Affairs portfolio, both the staff that I directly oversee and the staff that are within my portfolio, but that I kind of like more collaborate with on a very lateral level, although it is very kind of, we do try to keep it kind of like decentralized, you know, like a kind of a fair playing field, but these are all of the people that I work with. Next slide. Okay, great. So to talk about my work so far this year, I tried to come up with a way to like summarize all the work that I did in one sentence. And I've decided to call my work, or my big project for the year, the one thing that captures it all, ABC, accessibility, and building our capacity. Next slide. Cool. So accessibility means a bunch of things. I'm going to go with social accessibility. One of the big things I've been doing within SSMU, especially over the past couple months, it's kind of revolving around employment equity. So that included rewriting SSMU's human resources policy, resolving some concerns that were raised around like dead naming in our HR and accounting departments, mostly like software concerns. I'm also working on a project to compensate legislative counselors and student senators for their work. That has been an ongoing project and will continue into the winter semester. For open educational resources, for those of you who do not know, starting winter 2021, oh my God, how many times have I said this before, but starting winter 2021, all course packs will be offered free of charge by the library through my courses. So you have that to look forward to. That was kind of my big OER, I don't want to call it a win, but you know, that was a win over the summer. I have also been working very closely with the library to kind of oversee their development of the study hubs and hopefully the implementation of printing hubs sometime in the near future. For just general campus advocacy, I spent the summer reviewing the policy on harassment discrimination. That should come to Senate for approval sometime early winter semester. I'm currently working on overhauling the university student assessment policy. I'm doing that with the SRAC, Adrian. And lately, I've kind of taken up the cause of challenging and redefining McGill's definition of academic freedom, kind of in light of some recent controversies, I guess I should say, concerning equity and academic freedom. For general social justice within the SSMU, we amended the equity policy to include some language around like banning tone policing, because I know that's been a kind of continual concern, accessibility concern within the society for a while. The VP Student Life and I have been working on some harm reduction advocacy for MUSE, which is the I guess labor union that represents floor fellows. And for special researchers, I have a couple. So early on in my term, the Francophone academic rights researcher completed her report. That should be, actually, I think it is published at this point. The preferred names use researcher is still going. We're hoping to have the report out by the end of the semester. So in my term, I added 2 new special researchers, the special researcher for student health and wellness, which is looking at the wellness hub, and the special researcher academic accessibility and accommodations, which is working on the OSD. Next slide. Right, building capacity. Building capacity for what? For institutional advocacy. So I did that in a couple of ways. We established the Black Affairs Commissioner and Committee. The committee has started meeting a couple of weeks ago under the, I guess, stewardship of the BSN, and we recently hired the Black Affairs Commissioner. So we also worked on, especially with the VP Student Life, worked on implementing equity triages across SSMU departments to prioritize equity-seeking groups in internal SSMU processes. So think accounting forms, event requests, like booking requests, IT stuff, things like that. Something I took up over the summer and I've kind of been on the back burner, but I promise I haven't forgot about it, is improving accountability within SSMU. Especially I've been looking at the nominating committee a lot. For OER, we've been trying to revamp our OER project. For those that have been at McGill for a couple of years, you might remember the Textbook Broke campaign. We were trying to revive that. And in doing so, we hired a new OER coordinator who I worked with to develop an OER master plan for the year. There was also a student textbook experience survey that was released to essentially gauge student experience, specifically with like textbook costs and financial difficulty relating to textbook costs. So that is an ongoing project, and there should be a research report coming out at some point in the winter semester. Speaking of research, I worked with the SRAC again, who drafted the first ever SMU Researcher's Guide, which we hope will really improve institutional memory and kind of build capacity within the research portfolio kind of under UA. So I really we, in the past, it's always kind of been dependent on, you really hoped that you had a VP UA that had research experience. Otherwise, the special researchers were kind of on their own. So we're hoping that the Researcher's Guide will help with that. We've also successfully shifted away from using Google Forms and Google Drive for our surveys. We're now using professional survey platforms that have been recognized and used by many major research producers. Actually, we use the same system that most departments within McGill use. And on that same page, we are also working over the year on overhauling SMU's research ethics, essentially realizing that SMU produces a whole lot of research, but we don't really act like a research body, and sometimes things slip through the cracks. So we are working on really formalizing SMU's research and kind of lending some more credibility to it. For Senate Caucus, I worked with the governance manager to draft the first ever Senator's Guidebook that we're hoping is going to improve institutional memory, improve capacity within Senate Caucus. So we spend less time at the beginning of the year training and more time working on projects. I'm currently working on amending the Constitution and IRs of representation and advocacy with the governing documents researcher. Right now, Senate Caucus occupies kind of a limbo space in our governing documents, not really formal, not really defined. We're trying to fix that. And finally, at Senate, we're supposed to be conducting a membership review over the year, hopefully a review of the university statutes. I'm really hoping to add some student seats to Senate. We will see if that ends up happening. I'm going to try my best. And in doing so, we would really expand the capacity of a lot of, especially smaller faculties and schools, to conduct university level advocacy. Because currently, Senate seats are really kind of reserved to larger faculties, and it really shouldn't be that way. So that is going to be one big ongoing project for the year. And I think that is it for my projects. If anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns relating to the my work or my portfolio, or ideas that you have for projects, or if you think I'm doing a terrible job and I should resign, you're welcome to send me an email. So any questions, comments, or concerns, I have the easiest email of all of the executives. It is ua@smu.ca, and I really love hearing from students. I also have office hours that you can book, available on the website. And I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting some of you. All right, thanks for listening, folks.
All right, thank you very much. Before taking questions, I'm just going to note that one of the surveys that the VP University Affairs mentioned, I will be sending it in the chat for all of you to fill out if you so choose. But moving on to questions, we'll first begin with Councillor Chip Smith.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thanks, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Vice President, University Affairs, for their report. Just one short question. It was mentioned in the report about a new report on Francophone affairs. I'm just wondering where that would be. I am checking the UA website and I can't find it.
Right. So I believe that the reason it was not on the UA website was because originally Francophone affairs were not actually under my portfolio. I am struggling to find where it was published digitally, but I will get to the bottom of that. And in the meantime, anyone that wants access to the report, I just suggest that you shoot yet the commissaire an email for access, but I think we're in the process of uploading it. So hopefully I will have that up on our website soon. And in the meantime, anyone who wants to see it can shoot me an email, or Juliet.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm just noting for the purpose of the minutes that the link that's saved, it's the same link, but it just sent weirdly. So I'm going to resend it. But we'll move on to the next individual, and Andy Habert. Sorry, you should have access to talk now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Vice President, University Affairs. I was just wondering if the information on the harm reduction advocacy that you've been doing will be available on your website, or if it's going to be published to the student body more generally.
VPUA?
Yep. So right now we're kind of in the initial planning phases with MUs. Without making time commitments, the VP Student Life and I are hoping to bring a policy on harm reduction to Legislative Council sometime early in the winter semester. We're currently wrapping up consultations. So hopefully we'll have some commitments from SMU early winter 2021. So in which case I suggest that you follow along with Legislative Council. And if you have any specific questions on the work that we've been, actually, I can talk very quickly. We've mostly been meeting with upper level university administrators in student life and in student housing to especially work on the codes of community living, which kind of govern res experience, to kind of ensure that they incorporate harm reduction principles and kind of incorporate as well student feedback and student input. So those are two of the things that I've been doing lately. But in the future, we're hoping to have a policy commitment from SMU at some point in the future. Hopefully that answers your question. And if you have any further questions, feel free to email me.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other individuals with questions for the VPUA? Yep, Annabelle.
Hello, everyone. I'll just start by saying I work with Brooklyn, but I was just wondering if you could speak more. You briefly mentioned that you're hoping to increase the number of seats for students on Senate, and I was just wondering if you could explain the importance of that. Talk about it.
VPUA?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the importance of expanding student representation, especially in the university's governing bodies, really can't be understated. I think as it stands now, McGill has two main governing bodies, the Senate and the Board of Governors. On the Senate, I believe students are, I think it's 70, 75-ish % underrepresented, and on the Board of Governors, I think it's a similar number as well. It's roughly 60 to 70% underrepresented if you compare the population of students to the population of administrators, support staff, faculty. So as it stands now, students are already really underrepresented on our governing bodies, and that definitely impacts the kind of advocacy that we can do on Senate. To give you an idea, students I think only take up, undergraduate students specifically take up, I think, 13 seats on McGill Senate, yet we make up, I think the vast majority of all Senate activity is still conducted by students. All the motions and questions that are submitted are by and large submitted by students. So students are incredibly active as it is on Senate, despite being underrepresented. And that's just the faculties that are afforded seats. So that does include schools like social work, dentistry, nursing this year, and PTOT other years. So we really there are, first and foremost, there are just groups of students that are not represented on Senate, and students largely are quite underrepresented. And so the goal is that by increasing representation, we not only give seats to schools and programs that aren't already represented, but we expand the ability of students to kind of advocate to the Senate, because right now we're just severely outnumbered, and it does make it difficult to institute any enact any kind of action through Senate. But through the Senate membership review, which is conducted on a kind of regular periodic basis, we're hoping to underline and reinforce the need for greater student representation, especially for faculties, programs, and departments that aren't already represented. And thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Are there any other individuals with questions on the report of the Vice President, University Affairs? Seeing none, we will move on. We will move on to item 8E, report of the Vice President, Student Life.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, speaker. So, hi everyone, I'm Maheen. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm this year's Vice President, Student Life. And so for today's presentation, I've prepared a pretty high-level overview of what I've done this year, what my plans are for the rest of the semester, and a little bit about what I'll do in the upcoming semester. And so on the agenda today, I'll talk briefly about my portfolio and overview of what's inside of it. Activities night, I will cover clubs, services, family care, mental health, and then some other miscellaneous responsibilities or miscellaneous things I've taken on. So to begin with, just to get right into the Office of the Vice President Student Life and what I do. So a major part of my role is to oversee the over 250 plus clubs, services, and independent student groups that we have here. I manage relationships between SMU staff and the staff, or like the executives or collective members of these groups. And I'm also responsible for conflict resolution, so handling any complaints that arise with these groups. I generally just provide support, and that could look like connecting these groups with resources that we know of within the SMU community, or just generally resources that SMU has access to, helping with things like move-in for clubs for services and ISGs into the University Center, given that the building was closed for so long. And also like various other like support responsibilities, for instance, promoting them to the greater community, making sure that students are connected with these student groups. So yeah, that's pretty much it for club. If you could scroll back up. So yeah, thank you. So the second thing that I do is I carry out SMU's mental health initiatives along with the mental health team that we have, which is the wonderful team made up of the mental health commissioner, the outreach coordinator, and the advocacy coordinator. And then these coordinators both have their own committees, the mental health outreach and the mental health advocacy committee. So that is sort of the structure of the mental health team at the SMU. And I will speak further later on in the presentation about what we're actually doing, but that's a big part of my portfolio is mental health. I'm also responsible for SMU's family care policies and practices. And as sort of in conjunction with this, I'm the president of the SMU Daycare Board of Directors. And so as president of that board of directors, we have to oversee all like the legal and financial responsibilities of the daycare, as well as the nursery. And there's been a lot of challenge and change that we faced this year, especially as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as folks might know already, I was also chair of the fall referendum campaign to increase and renew the SMU daycare fee. And so that was another part of like my family care responsibilities that I'll touch on later more, but that's another big element of my portfolio. And then lastly, I liaise and collaborate with staff from McGill's student services. So that includes the Wellness Hub, the SSAO, and various other student services that we have. And so as I mentioned here, I collaborate significantly this year with Campus Life and Engagement to do a lot of outreach activities for incoming students as well as current students. And I also sit on the committee for student services, which I'll talk about later too, but that is part of my role to liaise and collaborate with student services. So to begin with, to talk a little bit about Activities Night. So Activities Night took place on September 9th and 10th, and it took place via an online platform called Eventus. And so I spent pretty much the whole summer assessing different platforms that we could use, liaising essentially with Peter from Eventus, who gave us a lot of hard work and assistance on the customer support end. And essentially, it was just transitioning Activities Night from what it typically is in the Tomlinson Fieldhouse with all these groups, folks being there in person, being able to connect with these groups, to what it was this year, which was a totally virtual experience. So students, if you were at Activities Night, you would know, but students were able to attend the event for the duration, 4 hours for 2 days. And even now, if you go to the Activities Night website, it's activities-night.eventus.io. Yeah, if you go to that website, you'll still be able to see that all the booths are up. There's still information about student groups there if you want to check it out. And you can't necessarily connect with them directly through the Activities Night platform anymore, but there is contact information for them if you want to get involved still. But I digress. Activities Night this year went really well. Some of the engagement metrics include we had 320 student groups, or not necessarily student groups, but just group booths. And we also had 6 to 8 sponsors who paid to have their places at Activities Night. We had a total of 3,438 active users, 1,653 event RSVPs, which I'll talk about what those events were later. 200,000 booth impressions, which is exciting. That's how many people clicked on the booths or how many clicks that the booths got in total. 11,000 messages like shared between students and student groups, and then 870 video chats, which are like one-on-one sessions between students and a representative from a group. So one of the things that I want to highlight about this year's activities night was that we incorporated sessions, or I guess what is referred to as events in the engagement metrics. I call them like sessions, and these included like webinars from different like just on different topics that were relevant to students. So for instance, we had one on student journalism. We had one on how to get a part-time job, which was very, very well attended. And we had 100 RSVP spots for each of these sessions. Some of them filled up really quickly, and then others were kind of the attendance was dwindling. So this is another thing that I'm hoping to implement for the winter activities that is going to come up in January. And some more information on that to come. A lot of the planning for that will be done like in early December, but I'm hoping to build on the feedback that we received from this year's activities, or from the fall activities night, to incorporate into the winter one. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Activities night this year, I think I would overall chalk it up to be a success. So for clubs, with regards to clubs, this year was especially challenging for clubs, given that the pandemic created a lot of difficult circumstances for traditional programming and traditional event planning. So a lot of clubs this year, unfortunately, are inactive. And one big project that I'm taking on right now is to figure out which clubs are inactive and then why, and then also figure out which clubs are active and how they manage to be active still and like carry out their mandate despite the situation we're experiencing. But for the most part, we're really trying to encourage active activity among clubs and trying to encourage online programming, ways that students can still get involved with these clubs despite a lot of in-person event limitations. But regardless, clubs this year, quite a challenge to I guess like oversee, but for the most part, it does seem like we have a handful of, or not a handful, but like quite a few still active groups. I digress. I'll start with the slides. So club workshops took place on September 19th, 20th, and 26th. We moved them to an online format. Normally they happen in the new residence hall ballroom, but this year we delivered them via Zoom, and everything, for the most part, we had like a couple of hiccups, but it went smoothly. And we will be doing club workshops round 2 in the winter semester for folks who did not get to attend this time. We are in development of a club portal, as has been spoken about by previous VP Student Life, but this time we essentially had to start from scratch again. We've identified the operational needs for what we need in a clubs portal. We are currently developing a business case that we will deliver to different providers, and we will soon consider various software proposals and demonstrations. So currently what we're doing is like developing the business case. And so our club portal committee it's a cross-functional committee of various people, various staff members across the SMU. And essentially the clubs portal is intended to replace a lot of the current processes that are disparate or like that are spread out. So what you'll see on, I think, the website currently that kind of houses all the forms and all the processes for clubs is called clubsportal.smu.ca. So all of those forms you will see migrated into a clubs portal that will be like more comprehensive, more streamlined, and hopefully just a better way to make sure clubs are following their processes and to make sure that we have the information we need from clubs. So that's all that I have to say about the clubs portal. Things are going smoothly. And then, just lastly from that slide, we also released 2 COVID operational plans that I worked on with the rest of the SMU events committee. And we also created the SMU events committee to address these major changes that are happening with regards to events as a result of COVID-19. And so the folks who are involved in the SMU events committee are myself, the building director, the general manager, and the operations manager. And so these are like one-hour meetings that happen every week, and we approve any events that come through that are not online, essentially. And we will now, given the lockdown, we haven't been doing that, but pre-lockdown, when there was like a little bit of room for us to approve in-person things, we did that. And then we also just have been coming up with a strategy for COVID-19 and how we intend, with the guidelines that we want to give clubs to help them with their event planning. So yeah, that's it for clubs. As for services, so all of the services that previously had space in the University Center have now moved in. We're also developing space agreements for tenants to formalize the process of services having space in the UC. So those are just pretty, not legal documents, given that services are not necessarily, they're not legal entities, they're all under SMU, but they're meant to be like a formal document that services can point to say that to justify the fact that they have space in the UC, and also for us to know, they just have like a document there instead of having to go through emails and like handshake agreements. this will help, I think, create institutional memory for services and also for us with regards to space in the building. So the Services Summit, which was a training, or like it was a workshop that was given to all the services to help them function this year, that took place alongside the club's workshops and ran quite smoothly. I am working with the Services Administrator Assistant to raise the digital profile of services and make sure that we're able to promote them better. And we are also currently in the process of service review with the Services Review Committee. This happens every year. We essentially do audits of all of the services, and we also do internal and external surveys that we send out. And we compile all this information and then, I guess, assess whether services have fulfilled their mandate. And this year we adapted a bit of the criteria to accommodate for pandemic conditions. So we obviously aren't able to necessarily do direct audits for some of these services. And so instead we've also adapted like our criteria, our grading process. So for some services which simply are not able to function because of COVID-19, for example, like those would be our security services, which can't do anything in person. We will likely be looking at like a conditional pass or a conditional fail option, given that the semester is just so different than others. So yeah, stay tuned for the services report, which will come out next semester. As for family care, so as I mentioned before, we passed the SMU daycare fee increase and renewal in the fall referendum. So that was increasing the fee from, I think, $2.72 up to $3. And thanks to all the folks who voted in the fall referendum. We're very pleased that we have this extra funding, and it'll be really, really necessary for the SMU daycare going forward. We actually hired a new daycare director recently, and there's been a lot of staffing changes going on within the daycare. But for the most part, it is all handled. We've also expanded the board of the SMU daycare, as we recently, or I guess a few months ago, ratified the memorandum of agreement that we have with PGSS to add new PGSS board members to the board. And and that essentially expanded the daycare board. And overall, the daycare operations are running quite smoothly, despite us having to pivot really quickly and make a lot of changes as a result of COVID-19, especially with regards to sanitation and PPE. And in addition to those things, those COVID-related things, there was also like the natural like HR situation around the daycare. So daycare was quite, I think things are now running smoothly. We had some challenges, but things are now running smoothly. And then lastly, I also want to mention for family care, I'm a member of the Joint Board and Senate Committee on Equity Subcommittee on Family Care. So that is meeting again. That's met one time and it'll meet again next month. So mental health. As for mental health, we had our Mental Illness Awareness Week from October 5th to 8th, which went quite nicely. We couldn't do any in-person events, of course, so we had a lot of like online events where we collaborated really significantly with the Wellness Hub, and we are looking forward to our Mental Health Action Week, which is being planned for January. And our Mental Health Advocacy Coordinator has released a couple of surveys on remote learning and like the experience that students are having with regards to remote learning, as well as Wellness Hub satisfaction. And the results of these surveys, you will be able to find, or the results of these surveys will be brought directly to the Wellness Hub leadership, as well as like other advocacy routes that we have ins with. So I really suggest that you complete these surveys if you haven't already. It'll really help us to voice your concerns to the administration. So yeah, also we have mental health roundtable meetings, which occur every 3 weeks. And the folks who attend these meetings are student group stakeholders pretty much around campus. And what we do is we share programming initiatives and sort of discuss the state, I guess, of mental health at McGill. We are also developing a student mental health website, which is in collaboration with the Student Services. The launch funding for this website is being pursued through the SPF, which is the Sustainability Projects Fund. And we are looking at a fee increase via referendum for next semester too. And lastly, for Keep Me Safe, which was a service that was implemented last year, as a result of, we also did like a fee increase to bring Keep Me Safe to students. Hopefully folks are enjoying Keep Me Safe and like, or are using Keep Me Safe, but it was featured at Orientation Week and will continue to be promoted via social media. And so if folks don't already know about Keep Me Safe, it also known as My SSP, it is a free mental health resource that connects you with counselors 24/7 in your preferred language. And so more promotion for that will occur throughout the year. And that's it for mental health. And lastly, miscellaneous. So this year I worked with Campus Life and Engagement quite closely to assist clubs and to develop programming. So what we did throughout the summer, I did a series of workshops, like every week for a couple of weeks, where we invited all of the clubs, all the services, I think we did one with ISGs. We also did one with PGSAs, which are post-grad student associations. And the workshop essentially entailed a brainstorming session for clubs to help them come up with activities and like events and programming for the year and ways that they can like shift their mandate or like adapt their mandate to accommodate for this upcoming semester. And so we look forward to doing more close engagement with clubs in collaboration with Campus Life Engagement, like I guess for the rest of the year. I also took over some communications responsibilities in part of the summer before our new communications team was hired. And so, yeah, communications now is running smoothly. We had some trouble, I guess, in the summer with hiring a new team, but all is good. And lastly, university level committee work that I have, I'm on the committee on student services. I'm on the fall reading break implementation committee and also the SSAO advisory board, which is the scholarships and student aid advisory board. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my presentation. If folks have any questions, you can direct them to studentlife@smu.ca, or I'm happy to take any questions you have here. Hope you and thank you all for coming to this General Assembly.
All right, thank you very much, VP Student Life. Are there any questions? I'll recognize Senator Daryanani.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Great to hear all the work that you've been doing. Could you just provide some insight regarding the fee, referendum fee for the winter next year for the website? Could you elaborate on what the website would be, what the fee increase is proposed to be? Yeah, thank you.
VP Student Life?
Yes, I'm more than happy to do that. So in fact, if you've been following Legislative Council, you would know that we actually tried to pass a fee increase this year, and it was for specifically Wellness World for us to implement that as a digital wellness solution. But we are looking at this instead for next semester. I can't exactly tell you right now what exactly the fee increase will be, like how much